Tell me this story of you guys lining up weeks before the race. I didn't know about this.
I normally get a call or a message, and it's a mad scramble. Hurry up, get the RV, get it in line as fast as possible, and normally we're definitely inside the top 5.
So you Sebring fans show up a month before the race to get the best spot by the fence.
Absolutely.
First come, first serve.
So February 2020, you guys lined up weeks before the 12 hours of Sebring.
That would be correct.
Yes, we did.
How'd that work out?
And now for Dinner with Racers with your hosts, Ryan Eversley and Sean Heckman.
Placeholder radio sound. I'm a driver and I'm very angry. The sound of a driver on the radio during a race.
Tonight, a crucial test in China's biggest city.
The virus has already appeared in all but one of China's provinces.
Countries in Europe have confirmed cases, most of those patients having traveled to Italy, where the number of
Health
confirmed
Organization
cases
says the risk of the virus expanding worldwide is now classified as very high.
There are now more than 118,000 cases in 114 countries.
Doctors work round the clock and compare the situation to a war zone.
There are now just under 300,000 confirmed cases of coronavirus and almost 13,000 deaths. Today, the dire situation in Italy.
16 cases so far have been detected and confirmed in the U.S. Another 47 people were evacuated from the Diamond Princess cruise ship.
This is day 2
Yeah.
of our road trip, and as you know, Ryan and I are about to drive all the way around the country, visiting big racetracks, little racetracks, road courses, ovals, all kinds of communities. And one of the reasons we thought you'd be a very suitable person to kind of help us get an understanding of what we think we're about to see is that North Carolina is very well divided, not just between liberal voters and conservative voters, but also between rural areas, very industrial areas.
It is, and the pandemic has certainly highlighted a lot of the good in the diversity in North Carolina, and it's also revealed some underlying fractures that I think a lot of us wanted to believe we had fixed.
North Carolina is at a new high for the number of people in the hospital.
Well, right now there are 829 people hospitalized in the state with COVID-19, the most since the pandemic began.
Treat us like children for a second.
Yeah.
So let's go to elementary school here.
Stop playing with your food.
Specific to our racetrack trip, we're going to go visit racetracks around the country, and we want to see just what a road course in California has to deal with versus the same thing in Wisconsin versus a short track in Indiana. What would you hope that we were going to learn from with a trip like this?
In an economic downturn, what is the role of the state in helping support those industries when the economy has tanked?
And specifically tanked when there's a lot of questions as to where is the role of government in something like a health crisis.
Yes, certainly,
Right.
certainly. Is the motorsports industry even on the radar screen?
Right.
What's the presence of the motorsports industry before your policymakers? How aware of it are they?
Yeah.
I think it's safe to say that from our founding as a country, we've always had a healthy debate on how much government should be involved. I think the divide between Americans on the appropriate role of government is sharper now.
Hello, everyone. Again, after today's events, I wanted to go ahead and apologize again. But I also wanted to share that as a private citizen in Indiana, I can't even access my own private property.
literally were driving the water truck when we got here first thing this morning, and your phone's been ringing because you're the answering guy when people are calling to see if you're open tonight for business.
Yep.
So literally this is as mom and pop as dirt tracks go.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I'm answering the phone as I'm riding the tractor around watering the track.
In the grand scheme of places we've been to, I'd say I'm probably least familiar with this track. Sell me on Daugherty Speedway.
It was a dirt track started in 1967 by Avery Henry, and out in the middle of nowhere, as you can see, there's the only thing around us is corn. It's got a long history. A lot of racers, a lot of people in Indiana have raced here. This was the first racetrack I'd ever raced at. I'd never been to a circle track until I visited this track.
Yeah.
Short track racing to me is almost like a personal thing for families. They come out. It's like a Saturday night tradition from the small town that I grew up in. And it sounds like this place has that family feel and also that local pride. Is that fair to
absolutely.
say? Yeah.
For the longest time, it was like the staple of this county. Back in the 60s and 70s and 80s, this racetracks were all you had. You had roller rinks and skating rinks and things like that. So you still have that aspect of the die-hard racer that's here every week. The gentleman that's been sitting out there waiting to get into the gate since 11 o'clock.
Is that who that is?
Yeah.
That's a fan?
Yeah.
Oh, we drove by that.
Wow.
Yeah, we had no idea.
Yeah,
we
we're
thought
like-
it might have been you. We're like, oh, maybe he's sitting out here
Nope.
like waiting on us. That's a fan.
That's a fan waiting to get it first one in the gate.
No kidding.
So you're telling me you're shutting the road off again to where I won't have access to my private property? I don't have access to this road to get into my property.
So Governor Holcomb of Indiana issued this sort of phase 1 stay-at-home order here in Indiana towards the second half of March. What was then the timeline for you guys in terms of shutting down?
We had scheduled our opening night, and that was our plan. His stage 2 started then. We weren't listed, so we felt that he had already hit stage 1, going to stage 2, that we could open, and we were wrong.
Concrete blocks on the west and metal barriers on the east block vehicle access to Daugherty Speedway on Benton County Road 650 South.
What were the conditions for a phase 2 reopening?
Phase 2 was some restaurants could start providing services at like 25% capacity, other places at 50% capacity.
But in all of this, racetracks in Indiana had no classification.
Right.
So what did you do?
Without seeing anything specific to racetracks, we took it upon ourselves that we were going to race. We were limiting everything. We were following guidelines set forth by the governor for all other businesses. I had received a call from the superintendent of the state police, Doug Carter, and he said, I want to meet with you.
Had you ever heard from Doug Carter before?
No.
Okay.
Never,
so
never heard from him.
He's the superintendent for the state in terms of law enforcement. Yeah,
Yep.
okay.
And so he calls, hey, I want to meet with you. And at this point, I was skeptical. Extremely
Hey, guy
skeptical.
I've never heard of with the state.
Yeah. Authority figure? What?
He's
Right.
calling me on my cell phone.
How'd you get this number?
He said, oh, I want to meet with you. And he was very eager to meet with me. So
Here we go.
I said, okay, let me give you a call back. So I called my attorney and I said, are they
smart? Yeah.
I said, are they going to arrest me? He said, well, he
Oh.
said, you've shown intent that you're going to break the law. There could be a possibility.
Huh.
And I said, based on legal counsel's recommendation, I'll do a conference call with you or whatever, but I'm not going to meet you in person. And that next day, I didn't even go to work because there was a heavy state police presence around the area. And I honestly thought they were going to come and arrest me because of my intent to race and break the governor's orders.
It was a small but vocal group that gathered near the Benton County Courthouse on Saturday. On one side was Speedway owner Michael Daugherty and his supporters. On the other were a group of about a dozen citizens who opposed Daugherty's plans to open the racetrack.
So we had a conversation, talked about all the specifics. They had their chief counsel for the governor on the call, as well as another attorney and State Superintendent Doug Carter. We talked through all the logistics, and they just said, basically, you can't run. And I said, okay, are you telling me or are you asking me? We're asking you. I said, okay, appreciate your concern, but I feel I'm within my constitutional right to run the racetrack.
So you're telling me you're shutting the road off where I won't have access to my private property?
And at the end of that, I told the superintendent and the chief legal counsel to the governor, I said, I'm going to need a cease and desist order. They met with the governor, and positive did come out of it because he said, I've got good news and bad news. The good news is we're adding racing as a classification to the Back on Track plan.
In Indiana.
Yep.
To the Back on Track.
Yep.
Plan. Yep.
And we're going to allow you to start practicing, but not until Monday because you could have an advantage. And he said, okay, so you're going to close? And I said, no, I think we're going to race. I said, did you get me a cease and desist order? No, we can't do that. Well, show up to the track on Saturday. I'll have a ticket waiting for you. You can come watch.
Okay. That's
so
weird.
That was,
I don't know why this went the way it did.
Yeah. Friday comes, the day before the race, and I come up here. We're not able to race, so I'm coming here to shut my water off. It's supposed to get down to like 28, 30 degrees.
Because at this point, you do have legal documents, so you are absolutely breaking the law now if you were to continue to do it.
Yep. So I'm coming to the track. I'm going to shut my water off, everything else. I've already announced on Facebook that we canceled the event. I've already announced to everybody we're refunding money. And I show up and I have barricades at the roads on both sides to where I can't even access my property. And I just went live on my Facebook feed, which has gotten over 500-something thousand views.
Yep.
So my question is, how is this legal that somebody can deny me access to private property that I've purchased, I pay taxes on, and lock me out of it to where I can't even go shut my water off with freezing temperatures tonight?
6 police cars immediately come up, sirens blaring. Somebody called in that I was coming up here to shoot somebody.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I'm coming to my own private property to shoot somebody.
Which you've announced, because that's how you do that.
Yep. Yeah. I actually was approached by several libertarian groups, Stop Up Government Outreach in Indiana, Liberty for Indiana, Liberty for Hoosiers. And they're like, oh, you need to do something, which, I've never been to a protest before in my life. So I said, okay, we can do something. And we had a group of counter-protesters against us. And they made it out to be like we're anti-law enforcement. And I'm like, no, we're not. I'm anti them barricading my property. And that was a decision made by the commissioners, not the law enforcement. But we got a response from the county sheriff on his Facebook page. So I feel that we got the insight and the recognition that we wanted out of it.
Yeah.
The internet knows a lot of things, as you know. The guy I'm looking at is not P.T. Barnum looking to make publicity stunts. What would you say to somebody that made that claim?
Everybody has their own right to their opinion. They say a lot of things. I was sitting with somebody out around the campfire last night, and they're, you know this person? They said you're an asshole. They're not wrong,
I was like, this happens to us.
Yeah.
This is the moment Virginians hoped would never come.
Breaking news this afternoon on the coronavirus in the Commonwealth.
The Department of Health says they're investigating 3 Virginia residents who possibly tested positive for the coronavirus.
The Virginia Department of Health says someone in Arlington County is now the 3rd person to test positive.
So we're about to visit Virginia National Raceway, which isn't too far from here. Different state, different kind of set of rules they have to follow. But what are some of the considerations that you think VIR has to deal with in terms of how the county and the government work with them versus a place like here?
VIR road course as opposed to a big circle track. Rolling hills, old farmland spread apart. You could line up people around the racetrack every 6 feet and cram a pretty good number of folks into the 3 1/4 mile. It'd be a nightmare for Kerrigan. At a circle track, big or small, but one with grandstands, you've got to come up with a different system. But the point is that we've got the science, we understand things, and if the tracks are willing to work with the government to find a way that'll help them do business in a way that's safe for their customers and safe for the state, we need to do that.
Well, I mean, it's hard to imagine being here in June and the thick of what would be our race season for track days and all sorts of events, and VIR completely empty. What was the timeline of events like for you guys here at VIR?
Obviously heard about it in March, like everybody. We would have people starting to call us up, asking what's our approach on it, and everybody was kind of like, didn't really know what it was, where it was gonna be. I got together with Connie and we sat down in our office and we really started to look at what is the demographics of our workforce made up? You know, a lot of our security people are retired individuals and that just do this because they love VR and they love being here, and it's like, oh boy. Connie and I agreed pretty quickly that we just needed to shut down the month of April so that we could understand, you know, really what is this gonna be and what's gonna happen. And that was probably the most frustrating month of my life. Erased the calendar, canceled every contract that we had, and we had to furlough everybody, you know, and that, that scared so many people. And then these executive orders start coming out. And it was Executive Order 53 that really kind of was like, uh-oh, because he singled out racetracks and was like, you know, you're done.
Executive Order 53.
Yeah.
That's a Virginia-specific order.
Correct.
Can you explain that to us?
So the governor kind of came out establishing what is essential businesses and non-essential businesses, and is specifically in one area mentioned racetracks. Everybody thinks, oh, motorsport, it's NASCAR. That's what everybody thinks. And so you're put into this box, and the governor looks at you. I mean, he's writing rules for stuff that don't apply to a drag strip, don't apply to a circle track, dirt track. It's just one blanket doesn't fit all when you get into people's business.
So because of the winter here, you budget for months of low or no income.
Yes.
But I assume the way your guys' budgets work, you can't budget for a whole other month or two.
It's a huge hit, and it's one that you're sitting here, when you really start running the numbers and start reverse engineering your budgets and going ahead and looking at it, just on the face value of track rental, it was a big number. We didn't even go into how much did we lose in camping. Then you start looking at, well, how much do we lose in lodging? It's like, oh my God. So how much are we losing in food and beverage? So we're a multi-use facility that has multiple ways to lose money.
Yeah. Can you tell us some of the things you guys had to do here in the state of Virginia for you to be able to operate privately in terms of safety guidelines and protocols?
You know, it's kind of funny. It's like you almost felt like you were a crew chief again. You know, it's like, all right, if it's not in the rule book, you know, it's kind of like you start looking at, you know, literally, I mean, immediately you have to understand that you have to restrict entry to your facility. You have to understand now who is coming onto your facility. Phase 1 was a social gathering of 10. Phase 2 is a social gathering of 50, and we don't know what the projections are for the next phases.
And you're currently in phase 2 as we speak.
Currently in phase 2. We didn't have any control over this, but I think the one thing I've loved is everybody that we talk with are figuring out we're all in this together. We're all in different boats, but we're in the same storm.
Hi, Sean. Byron Tucker with the Alamance County Sheriff's Office, 423 here on Wednesday afternoon, June 10th. Regarding your request, now that this issue has moved between the state and the racetrack, then we feel our role is over with this. So, but thank you for the invitation, and I hope you guys have a good stay here.
It's the image that gained national attention weeks ago. Packed stands, no social distancing, and only some people in masks. Once Governor Roy Cooper caught wind of the more than 2,000-person crowd at Ace Speedway in Alamance County, he called it, quote, dangerous and reckless.
So Ace Speedway is a small track nearby. We went there after we heard that they put on an event that had thousands of people show up, and it didn't look like any social distancing was taking place, and it didn't look like anybody was wearing any sort of mask or PPE. We've heard drivers have gotten sick from being there, and when it went big, they basically said no media can come. And then the governor, Roy Cooper, he said if you're going to have an event, it can only have 25 people because of social distancing and all those things, and it's become like a big hoopla. So what do you see being the most likely scenario for a solution?
I think the good news in North Carolina is that Governor Cooper understands the balance. His approach has been absolutely science-driven. The governor and his team sat down with NASCAR, and I think Governor Cooper understands that you can't expect a local speedway to have the team of lawyers and experts that NASCAR does. But the takeaway from that is that the governor is very willing to work with an industry and learn from an industry, learn from a business. Hey, what are your particular needs?
That is a dangerous situation that ought to concern all the local officials and all the citizens surrounding that venue.
We've seen headline news from some small tracks because they've hosted races out of what looks like desperation. Can you relate to the hardships that a smaller track's going to go through?
I had an epiphany when we were sitting here going through and trying to figure everything out. And it was like, I'm really, really grateful that we only have one event that we rely on tickets on. We have just one event. I don't know how those circle tracks are doing it because they have to have that ticket income.
A North Carolina Speedway isn't listening to Governor Cooper's order that restricts mass gatherings. Last week, the governor even issued a letter to the county sheriff to prevent Ace Speedway from hosting events. The Speedway held its race this weekend with the owner calling the event a peaceful protest of injustice. At least 800 tickets were sold.
They have a sign that basically said, this event is a peaceful protest against injustice and inequality, or something to that effect.
If folks are legitimately concerned about their constitutional right to assemble being infringed, then we can't pick and choose which rights you get to protest and don't get to protest at all. That's not fair at all. But if you're charging tickets for it, it's probably not a protest. It's a race. And if it's going to be a race, it needs to be under the same rules as anybody else that's going racing.
As you start going through and it's not enforceable, you kind of could get a little bit bold and saying, okay, well, great, I'll just do whatever and come and challenge. They made it clear that there are ways that they can come after you, whether if you have any kind of state-issued certification, operating agreement, ABC license, Virginia Department of Health.
So you could run a big public event right now and not go to jail, but maybe a permit that you need for next year may be harder to get.
Or wouldn't be there at all.
My guess right now, if you could have gotten an interview with the management of Ace Speedway, they tell you they feel like they're not being heard. That the government doesn't understand their business. And it may be that they haven't been heard yet, but I think if they made the effort to reach out to Governor Cooper's team, they're willing to work with Ace just like they are everybody else.
Two new cases of COVID-19 in Monterey County.
The state says there are now 26 positive COVID-19 patients in Monterey
County Health Officer Edward Moreno confirmed that 25% of confirmed cases in the county are in agriculture.
So the inputs for a decision maker is complicated at Laguna Seca because some of those jobs and some of the revenue there goes to the county since the county owns Laguna Seca. Monterey's area is different from other parts of California. It's not dense like Los Angeles. Just because it hasn't hit Monterey as significantly as it has LA, San Francisco, etc., doesn't really provide significant protection to the people of Monterey if everyone comes from San Francisco and is jam-packed in to Laguna Seca to watch the race.
California was really one of the first to clamp down, but that's also because you've got areas like the Bay Area in San Francisco, San Mateo County, Los Angeles County further south, fairly high traffic congested areas. Monterey County is not. Do you feel like this track and this county have had to deal with measures that aren't necessarily directed at them?
Not necessarily so. We have a big agriculture industry. They're bringing people in during season to help do the agricultural work. So we've had a big spike in the Salinas Valley area.
We did not have some of the same issues at the beginning of the pandemic. We were set up very, very well. By April, we were ready to roll. We just fortunately were not getting the exposure at that point. But then things changed because as the growing season started to ramp up and workers came in from other parts of the state and other parts of the country, all of a sudden we started to see the incidences of COVID start to rise.
So California has different phases to allow reopening, and basically, phase 2 applies to hair salons or outdoor stadiums or whatever. There is no uniform placement for racetracks.
Not really, but if you kind of look at it, Monterey County is currently in stage 2.5. Live public events are stage 4. So we're trying not to be a live public event like a football game, basketball arena, things like that. We don't want to be classified along those lines because you can't social distance. You are stuck in your seat.
Okay. Yeah. So you would challenge the idea of being called a sports stadium because, as opposed to something like, say, an oval, where everyone is in fact seated next to each other in a sort of a bleacher environment, racetracks aren't that way. You can meander around and therefore shouldn't be held to those same standards.
Especially a road course like this.
Right.
I mean, up in the corkscrew, all the hillsides.
Who owns Laguna Seca?
I do. The person next door to me does. Any taxpayer in Monterey County owns Laguna Seca.
For those of us who follow racing and really follow the last several years, it's been an interesting time, and there seems to have been a several decade-long battle with kind of local residents against track management, and Laguna Seca, as we know it now, is under new management this year. According to media reports that we read, it's been a little bit of a contentious relationship. When something like this happens, where theoretically the track is even less profitable than it would have been previously, do you hit a point where it's like, you know what, we can make more tax revenue by making this a housing development?
Over my dead body, that would not happen. Whether it would be converted to a park that was just open space, I really think that would be a difficult sell.
So even on a year like this year, where Laguna Seca will likely underperform previous years in terms of numbers, it doesn't sound like at any point you're sitting there going, forget it, we don't need this.
That hasn't been a conversation that we have had at this time, no. We're going to have to redo our budget in just a few months.
Right.
And that's when we're going to have to make some pretty tough decisions. Will it be on the same chopping block that everything else will be? Yeah, we're going to have to examine everything and determine, when you really look at the return on the investment, you can't just look at it in this very narrow space of time, because this is such a unique time frame. Who the hell knew we were going to have a pandemic?
Right.
We've got to be able to look at it the long haul.
So you say it's not going to become a housing development, but at the same time, could it be possible that the track could be put under a completely different scenario than we've known it in previous years?
Of course, anything is possible. You can't just, lock the gate and say, we'll come back in a couple of years and see how things are going. I love this comment that I was just on a water meeting about. It says, absent data, definitely trust your instincts, but get data. And,
I don't know if you've been on the internet recently, but that doesn't work.
A lot of news out of Riverside County over the last few days.
Riverside County now has 16 coronavirus cases and 3
Riverside County public health officials say there are now 58 confirmed new cases of COVID-19, bringing the countywide total to 291.
How long have you been at Paris Auto Speedway?
This is our 25th year.
Okay.
We opened the first weekend of March to celebrate our 25th anniversary and got one race in, and 4 days later, we're told to close your doors.
This is literally a family business. It's you and your family members who have basically all the promotional rights to this area.
Correct. It was originally started with my father when he was alive. I'm the youngest of 4 boys.
Yeah.
Next thing I knew, I took over the reins and have for about the last 22 years.
Mm-hmm. And so this is your full-time job?
Yes.
And there's no parent company that you can rely on if things go south?
No.
No family trust that you can go back to?
No.
So this goes down, that is your income?
Yes.
So you and your family basically have the promotional rights to this for 50 weeks a year. Whether you sell tickets or make any sort of money, that bill has to be paid regardless.
This is the way it works in California. Most racetracks are on fairgrounds. I still have to continue to pay for my permits and licenses. Riverside County, they tax you on your personal property, and those taxes are tens of thousands of dollars a year, and still got to pay them.
Do most tracks of this size and nature have any sort of budget hidden away for something like a pandemic or an economic shutdown?
I've never lived through a pandemic. I mean, I didn't know what it was. Tracks like this don't have reserves.
Yeah.
They live week to week, month to month.
What are your streams of income pre-COVID?
So you got sponsorships, you got concession sales, you've got pit pass sales, you got entry fees, you've got parking, you've got front ticket sales, souvenirs, and track rentals, and some film locations.
Because we're here in California, right?
Yeah.
So I only heard 2 line items there that didn't require fans.
You know, on the East Coast or Midwest, they're allowing fans now, not out here. Some guys are trying to run with no fans. I can't make that model work.
Yeah.
I mean, I can tell you right down to the penny almost every weekend what we're going to do. Front gate, back gate, we've been doing this long enough. I can't make any show work without fans in the stands.
California is a big state. To an extent, Governor Newsom has to react to the counties that are really, really being hit hard. Do you feel that in Riverside County you're being held accountable to something that isn't necessarily affecting you guys in the same way?
Being that we're a regional facility, that we draw from LA, Orange County, San Diego, Arizona, Northern California, I don't think we're being treated unfairly. Last thing I want to do is have an event and then several people got the virus.
So this fairground model, if we want to call it that, is fairly common, especially in California. What do you think the future is for this kind of dealing now that we've seen how convoluted it can get?
I think you're going to see probably half the tracks go away. I think you're going to see all the agreements renegotiated down the line. You know, I feel for these guys, but the good will survive, hopefully, and the people that don't have deep pockets won't. We survived the first 9 years here without making money. Most people would have walked. Most families would have said, the hell with it. I mean, we're a racing family. If this lasts another 18 months, what the hell are we going to do? What are we going to do? I mean, right now this business has a value of 0. I mean, just be blunt, 0.
Of the season will happen right here in Texas. The Genesis 300 is scheduled now for Saturday, the 6th of June. He says the Speedway, IndyCar, and state health leaders are going to make sure all this racing happens without any risk of spreading the coronavirus.
It sounds like what's happened in Texas is the same thing that we're able to work out for Charlotte Motor Speedway, where you've got racing, you've got the teams there, cars on track, great race going on, put it on TV at least. That doesn't put any fans at risk. Government should absolutely work with race series, with track owners to try to find a way to keep the racing going in a way that still is not going to put the public at risk.
In the grand scheme of a place like Ohio where counties have a lot of control versus maybe a place like California where it's maybe a little bit more state controlled, where would you say Texas kind of lies in that?
Really the state. They make the majority of the calls on these kinds of things, but some take this as an opportunity to flex their muscle, you know, and never let a crisis go to waste, you know, jump on it. So...
This is probably the biggest facility we've been to so far.
Yeah.
What are some of the overhead expenses you have here with or without income?
Well, you have the power bill, and the truth is the piece of property is so large it's served by 3 different power companies. You know, so insurance on your staff, taxes on your staff. This place eats money every single day, whether you're using it or not, whether you've got it turned on, quote unquote, or not. It all adds up. Nothing here is small and nothing here is cheap. Everything, everything is expensive to do. So it just eats money.
You guys recently held an IndyCar race here. How did that work in terms of no ticket sales, which I know is obviously the track's big income source?
NASCAR and IndyCar are completely different kinds of business deals, the sanction agreements. In NASCAR, you get a huge TV check, rights fee. In IndyCar, you get 0. They're just a different business venture altogether.
So if there's no fans,
there's no revenue. You know, Roger Penske, I've known him well for, what's it been, 6 years. Roger said, we got to run Texas. And I said, well, you know, I don't know what to tell you unless you want to talk about renting the track from us. He said, well, I can't do that. He said, if we're going to run Texas, you got to pay us. And I said, well, okay. I said, you know, you call me. I didn't call you. Roger started texting me all the time. I mean, he was trying to convince me, you know, that we really need to do this. And he started ending his text with emojis. Now, I would have never pictured Roger Penske using emojis, but he does. Ultimately, we settled on a smaller number. It still meant that it was a 100% loser. I mean, every penny we spent was digging that hole deeper. We needed to do this to get the sport of IndyCar racing going. NASCAR had started up a couple weeks prior to that. It was obviously for us, a big loser, but it's an investment in the future.
NASCAR Cup Series coming through here in a couple of weeks. Of the events you put on, that is the one event where there is some form of television revenue that comes through.
It gets, you know, helps your cash flow.
Okay.
You know, that kind of thing. Fortunately for us, we're going to have fans. Fans means ticket revenue. Fans mean sponsors are more pleased than none. You're going to sell some hot dogs and some Cokes, and you're going to sell a ball cap or two and a T-shirt or two and that kind of thing. So all those things help.
You guys probably aren't going anywhere regardless of what happens with this deal.
No. The only constant is change, and the sport changes at light speed. Will that slow down some because we all took a shot to the stomach in 2020? It probably a little bit, but not as much as it should. I don't think fans are going to go, you know.
Right.
They had a bad year in 2020. Let's hold off on expecting that until 2025.
Yeah, you guys had been planning for this. It's one of the biggest sports car races in the world. And 10 days out, you have to shut it down.
Yeah. I think we literally went home one day and said, this is going to happen. We're going to pull this off. We're going to be able to get through our race, and all the bad stuff's going to happen after. And the next day, we postponed it. We had prepared everything. We had done everything necessary. This place looked great. You know, it's an old place. Sebring's an old facility, 70 years old. It takes a lot to get it ready for a race like the 12 hours. From an advertising standpoint and from a track prep standpoint, we spent most of our money. So we spent all the money to operate the race. It just didn't happen.
So the main road for just about anybody getting into Sebring is US 27.
Right.
On either side, once you get within, let's say, 10, 20 miles, you start seeing hotels and food places popping up. I'm going to go on a limb and say those places are built on the foundation of this racetrack.
To a certain extent, they are. I don't know that to be a fact. Between the car clubs that are here and the 300 days of testing, and then, of course, the 12 hours, you try to get a hotel room anywhere near Sebring, you better book it at least a year in advance.
With 300 track rentals, even if it's not a big signature event, there's still a lot of hotels and a lot of restaurants here that seem to rely on the infrastructure that comes out of Sebring. So when you guys are shut down, what does that do to this area?
It hurt, you know, unfortunately, and it's been particularly difficult for these young people, particularly, and then the business owners. I hadn't been here before I started working here, and when I got here, I was amazed at the fans and what the people are, you know, from a competitor standpoint, you know, I mean, you just people lining the fence line here and screaming and yelling, and sometimes they have clothes on, sometimes they don't.
It doesn't matter if we're on track or not.
Exactly. But, you know, when we had to tell those people, hey, sorry, but we're not going to have a race this year, it was like a funeral.
Yeah.
It was really bad for those people.
Did you have any sense over here that in February, when you first heard about this coronavirus, this could get canceled?
No.
Not at all.
Absolutely
not at all. Heard at first that the WEC cars were pulling out because of some of the drivers and different things not making it here.
Right, couldn't fly over because they canceled a lot of the airplanes and stuff.
So was definitely bummed out about that.
So you literally show up like 2 weeks before?
Like a month before.
Really? To get the good spot?
Yes,
so
to get our spot.
So there's literally like a bunch of you guys.
There's 300-400 campers sitting out in the field every year before the gates open. And then Come to find out that I think a day or two later that they called the race.
I mean, it was obvious that, especially in my age group, because I'm retired now, we're more susceptible to the virus than a lot of younger people are. So we pretty much understood what they were talking about.
When they canceled the race, the guy from Sebring, one of the main guys, came out and he said, you know, if y'all want to drive around the track tomorrow, we're going to bring the pace car out here and just get in line behind the pace car. We'll do a couple of laps. We'll take some pictures and we'll hang out.
Actually, a lot of people stayed for about a week or 2 weeks after the event, hung out and set the tents up, cranked up the music, barbecued and partied.
There are now 28,952 cases of coronavirus here in Ohio.
A total of 12,615 people have been hospitalized since March, an increase of 86 from yesterday.
We spoke with another racetrack who mentioned that politicians aren't necessarily alien to golf courses.
Yeah.
And so an event like a Golf Masters or something like that might get pushed a little bit faster, whereas racing's not necessarily a politician's sport that they go and play on Saturday or Sunday when they have the day off.
I would say that we as an industry have not done a good job representing ourselves.
Dirt track racing or motorsport as a whole?
Motorsports as a whole. That's probably something that we got to change pretty quick.
Yeah.
Is that in terms of just it's hard to classify?
Speedways are not mentioned in anything.
So, like, you'll see campgrounds, you'll see gathering events or gathering coliseums, things like that.
Yeah.
But a racetrack
stadiums,
doesn't.
arenas, amusement, entertainment.
So, right. And so, what is a racetrack and all of that? It's not defined here in Ohio.
And Ohio's got racetracks, quite a few.
61.
Here in June, we're right in the nexus of that battle between lives versus livelihoods.
Right.
And with altering science every week and different media reports and whatnot, it's so hard to make that call as to where that balance is. As it relates to something like a racetrack, which is sort of a microcosm of that small business scenario, is there a process you feel like you have to go through to make that choice?
There's a variety of sources of information for elected officials. Newspapers, the media, TV news, and so forth. In my mind, the best source is my constituents, the 85,000 people that have hired me to work for them. But then lobbyists, and we talked earlier, a NASCAR can hire a lobbyist, but Ace Speedway can't afford to hire a lobbyist. And to many folks, lobbyist is a bad word. But at the same time, there is value in having someone who understands an industry and understands politics and that can come explain their position on the issue to me.
I would argue in the grand scheme of short tracks, dirt tracks, nationwide Eldora is one of, if not the biggest track out there.
Yeah, you don't have to argue. It's true.
Humble brag. Excuse me. In our whole tour, it seems like the bigger tracks are far more compliant. Is that cause or effect?
Tony owns this place. He wants to do things right. I think the other thing you got to look at it is Tony actually owns this place.
So if you guys, for lack of a better expression, went rogue, this doesn't become Eldora is fighting with the government to keep themselves out there.
Right.
It's literally one of the biggest names in motorsport that's going to be attached to this, and he's going to end up on the Today Show.
Go from Eldora to Tony Stewart's racetrack.
Yeah.
Is what they'll call it.
And I mean, we don't need to do that.
Yeah.
We don't want to do that.
In Wisconsin, the state Supreme Court reversed the governor's safer-at-home order.
Struck down the safer-at-home order, ruling it is unlawful.
People living in Wisconsin are now free to visit friends and family and go to restaurants and bars. The Wisconsin Supreme Court ruled Governor Tony Evers overstepped the authority by extending the state's stay-at-home order.
So, Road America in Wisconsin is in a much different scenario. How would you view that?
America has a strong federal system where the states have significant power with regard to the federal government, which means that individual states are going to make different decisions driven by the dynamics of politics in that state. And in Wisconsin, you've got a governor of one party, one political persuasion, and a Supreme Court dominated by those of a different political persuasion. So the governor made one decision. The Wisconsin Supreme Court interpreted the law and the Constitution to invalidate the governor's order.
Welcome back. As racers get ready to fire up their engines, the track at Road America is one of the first to welcome back fans.
Please remember, as you come through the gates, we want to keep everybody safe. We'd ask everyone to please practice social distancing. When that can't be accomplished, we would encourage you to wear a mask.
This will be the first fan-attended IndyCar race in 2020. Even in the grand scheme of professional motorsports, this is, I believe, the first relatively unrestricted fan-attended event. A lot of eyes on you. A lot of ways this could go wrong.
To be honest, the first one out of the gate, it's uncomfortable for everybody because they don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
I know in my heart I'm going to sleep at night knowing that we did everything we possibly could to have a safe event.
Is IndyCar making you do things that you'd rather not? Are you forcing things?
Yes.
Proceed.
You know, when I get 8 pallets of sanitizer showing up, you know, a special delivery from Indianapolis.
Was it like Roger Penske branded hand sanitizer? Was it like Captain Hand Sanitizer?
But we don't have anyone to hand all those items out at the gate. So, you know, hello temp staff, you know that. And when we see 2,000 feet of bike fence show up here on a semi a couple weeks ago, I think at that point we knew that the paddock was certainly going to be closed.
Right.
There was no way around it. They're doing it for the right reasons. IndyCar wants us to be successful just as we do. This place is a square mile. So if you do your math and you practice your social distancing here on 600 plus acres, I know it's a lot more tickets than we'd ever sell. I can guarantee that, even at 50% capacity. You know, we've taken a lot of steps. You're hearing the announcements, you're seeing the things on the big screens. That's a continuous process. Folks, when they come here, they come through the gates and they're gonna get a bottle of sanitizer and a mask, and we're gonna encourage them to wear it because we think it is the right thing.
This is your first race back since the shutdown. You guys are arguably more under the microscope than other racetracks might be because of the last few weeks. Do you feel more pressure to be compliant?
The last thing we want is to get a crowd full of people and they get sent home because some jackwagon wants to flex his muscles and say he's got authority. I think you'll see people understanding that they need to stay away. You'll have the ones that will not care, but then you'll have the ones that we have a large facility. They'll stay away, they'll have their masks on, which, you know, we're completely fine with. We didn't want to force masks on anybody, but if you're worried about it, you know, absolutely wear a mask, wear gloves. I think the level of excitement will be really good tonight. Everybody will be here getting pumped up, smell that race fuel, watch some speed.
Let's say tomorrow is a practice run for the big event in November. When I walk around with the camera, what am I going to see different?
So we've separated things this week greatly. All the drivers and teams and competitors are coming in one gate, going through a screening process every day that they arrive, temperature checks, there's a list of questions, and then the fans, they also go through the same procedure, you know, temperature check, list of questions, sanitation stations, if you will, clean teams, a lot of signage that's never been here before.
Sebring is a party. It is known as a party. In my opinion, it's going to be pretty hard to contain the fans to guidelines that you set.
You know, and a lot of our fans have been coming here for 30, 40, 50 years in a row, and they do the same thing every year, and they hang with the same people every year, and they want it to be the same. And they want it to be the same this year. And they've told us that. Don't know yet if we can do that.
How many years have you been coming?
Since 1988.
Oh, wow.
Without missing.
Wow. Okay.
I'm only 17 years.
Oh, rookie.
She's a rookie.
Rookie.
Yeah.
So Ryan and I have been going all over the place. And the thing we've learned is that I don't think this virus is going to kill the sport at all.
No. These cars need to be on track. They need to see their sponsors' names shown. They need TV time. the whole 9 yards. I'm glad they're back racing.
I'll be here. Me and my 35 buddies be camped right over there under those 2 trees. It's really, really quite an event, and it's the best club I've ever been a part of.
With all the craziness that's going on, can you understand the reasoning for the shutdown?
I can understand it a little bit, but I also understand that he's put in all the precautions that we need to tonight to have this event. And I think it's really good for the people to get out and everybody to support their local tracks.
Every week, every night that I don't get to go, that puts a hurt on me because I don't have very many more opportunities to go.
First event that fans have been able to attend for IndyCar this year, and it's a very spectator-friendly track. Does that make you nervous at all?
Being that it's the first major sporting event this year, I'm not as nervous because you're able to spread out versus a track with grandstands only.
I was definitely concerned we weren't going to be allowed to come here, but I never had any doubt in my mind that if they allowed us to be here, I was going to be here.
Blue collar state, you have that working man's mentality and a little more independence on self-sufficiency, and all that goes hand in hand with being able to do what you want when you want.
I don't think this is a long-term hit. There's too many good things going on.
It's a hardy bunch, right? Drivers overcome finding a new ride. There's always these setbacks, and this is no different.
We're not in this to make money. We're in this to provide a service for our community and our fans.
If you want to be as pessimistic as you want, then quit and go home. You got to be optimistic and keep your head on straight and move forward.
It's way too important to the industry, to this community. I'll be long gone before this goes away.
Where I didn't think any of this was possible, now I don't have any expectations, and it's just, you just got to roll with it.
Hard for me to believe, growing up the way I did, that you'd be in a place like this one day, but it's been good.
Well, as I told the state, our fans bring their own masks and goggles in normal situations.
The vast majority of times, policymakers have good intentions. Any race team you've been on, any company you've worked with, you want to feel proud of being a part of it. And the General Assembly, the same way. I want to be proud to be a member of the House of Representatives. And I'm not ashamed that there are people there who disagree with me, as long as they're there to do their vision of good. I'm sitting here thinking, okay, I'm going into political philosophy, and I've got to compete against the poster episode.
I came down from Kentucky, a place called...
You a fan of Undercover Boss?
Yeah, great show.
Who was the best guest?
Hands down, Stephen Klubeck.
Agreed. Do you watch the show Undercover Boss?
Yeah, I do watch it from time to time, yeah.
Do you have a favorite guest?
Probably the episode with Stephen Klubeck. I really enjoyed that. It was really cool. I love the whole resort business, so that was a...
Just out of curiosity, do you watch Undercover Boss?
Yes.
Awesome. Who would you say is your favorite guest so far?
I think Stephen Klubeck.
Do you watch the show Undercover Boss?
Oh yeah, Undercover Boss. My wife and I really like that show. Where's that one? Who's the guy from Vegas? Was that Stephen Klubeck?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. Is that your guy?
Oh man.
Stephen Klubeck is just amazing.
Wow.
He cracks me up.
You went right for it.
Always good.
So you guys television people?
Yeah.
Your favorite show?
Right now, Yellowstone.
Okay, not what we were looking for, but okay.
I know.
All right.
So, do you like the show Undercover Boss?
Yes.
Do you have a favorite guest?
Stephen Klubeck.
I don't know how much TV you watch, but have you ever seen Undercover Boss?
Yes.
Was there a specific guest that kind of stood out to you?
Probably Stephen Klubeck.
Yeah, you ever watch Undercover Boss?
Yes, all the time.
Interesting. All right, do you have a favorite guest?
Stephen Klubeck
and Yellowstone.
That's going in.
You better put Yellowstone in there.
me that cornbread and buttermilk, a country boy's delight. I eat it every morning and I eat it every night.
When it comes to Green Park, just thinking about capacity and things like that, if everyone has hepatitis already, because they do, what's one more disease?
We're on a road trip!